Welcome back. This video is going to walk you through some ideas from my paper called From Being to Good to Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. It appeared in a journal called Lex Naturalis a couple years ago, and ultimately it's going to serve as a metaphysics and a metaethics for the moral principles grounded in or found in the Declaration of Independence. The Semiquincentennial of the United States is coming up over the next year or so, a little over a year from now, so I thought it might be fun to have this video out there. This is the third video in the series. The first two are available on the channel, and you can look at those. The first one gives an overview of the philosophy of the Declaration, broadly speaking. The second one kind of deals with the metaphysics involved, of metaphysics of existence involved in the Declaration of Independence, and then this video is going to deal with the metaethics of the Declaration. So metaethics is the study of the nature of not particular moral claims or moral issues or morality at the kind of level of human action, but deals with kind of the metaphysics of ethics. So metaethics asks the questions, what is good? What is the nature of goodness? What is good? And kind of how do we know it? If you want to put a metaethics or an epistemology of metaethics as well, how we know the good. So this video, I'm going to walk you through 4 arguments. Maybe we might only get through one of the arguments today. Might have to do a second one here. So the arguments are from Thomas Aquinas, and I'm deriving these 4 arguments from an interpretation of them from a text, an article in a book called, the article is called, I think it's Aquinas' View of the Good, and it's by Eleanor Stump and Norman Kreitzman, and it's in a book called Being and Goodness, edited by Scott McDonald. Came out a few years ago. And it's a really good book. I highly recommend it to anyone interested in medieval metaethics. It's excellent. It deals quite a bit with Boethius and his view of the good at the beginning, and McDonald has that, and there's commentaries on all kinds of things in the it's not quite an anthology, but it's a really nice edited volume on being and goodness. So in the last video, I talked a little bit about how there's a metaphysics of the nature of reality, the nature of being, which is Thomistic in nature. That to be is to exemplify an essential nature. And in this video, I'm going to continue and see how that basic metaphysics of goodness itself, how a basis of metaphysics of the good, or metaethics, flows from existence understood as essential exemplification. So if you want the background on this, you might need to watch those the first 2 videos in the series. But you can watch this as a standalone video too, because it's dealing with just the 4 views of Aquinas, or 4 arguments of Aquinas to the identity of being and good. The 4 ways to good. That's what I'm calling Aquinas' 4 ways to good. So from what's been considered so far in this paper, I've argued that we can know existence itself from ordinary sense experience. And this section will add something to this. If we know existence, and we also know goodness. So in other words, what I'm going to argue is that if you know what existence is, you know what goodness is, with a little reflection. So the basis of this idea will be found in 4 ways in which Aquinas argues about goodness and being, as presented by Eleanor Stump and Norman Kreitzman in their chapter Being and Goodness in McDonald's Anthology. I'll offer an evaluation of these arguments, and the purpose of which is to show both the importance of these arguments in clarifying the concept of good, the limits of these arguments as demonstrations of our direct knowledge of good, and the soundness of the premises, or the soundness of the arguments given the truth of their premises. Okay. So the first way here is an argument from desire, or this is a kind of a tricky notion because desire is not, when it comes to being or anything that it has existence, is not a desire of emotions or the intellect. So when Aquinas talks about desire, he's not talking about anything that involves an intellect or even a will. So it's a strange term that's translated from the Greek term epheatai or epheatai. You know how you pronounce your ancient Greek, and it comes from Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics, that all things desire the good. And again, it's the term in Greek means more like aim at, or are directed towards, or are aiming towards. Appetunt in in Latin, and desire in English, but from the Greek it's epheatai. So, I'll get into that a little bit more. So, in a recent undergraduate ethics course, I had to try to explain to my students how Aquinas argues to the conclusion that goodness and being are really the same. This is in the Summa Theologica 1, question 5, article 1. So I set about trying to formalize Aquinas' arguments using categorical logic. In doing so, I encountered a puzzle in the text, having to do with the structure and formal validity of the argument. So as analysis of the first way, I'll try to make clear what Aquinas seems to be doing in the deductive structure of his argument, which may add additional clarification for the other three ways. So again, the purpose of doing this examination of the argument for the identity of being and good is to ground good directly in the nature of reality, and from there to build up to principles like the unalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay, so now this is going philosophically way down to the basics of metaphysics and metaethics. Okay? And in metaethics, it's grounded in metaphysics. The essence of goodness consists in this, according to Aquinas. This is quoting Aquinas in the Summa. That it is in some way desirable. Hence the philosopher says, the philosopher of course is Aristotle, in the Nicomachean Ethics, goodness is what all desire. Now it is clear that a thing is desirable only insofar as it is perfect, for all desire their own perfection, but everything is perfect insofar as it is actual, as is clear from the foregoing, and he quotes some previous passages in the Summa. Hence it is clear that goodness and being are really the same, but goodness presents the aspects of desirableness which being does not present. So Stump and Kreitzman interpret this as follows. This is quoting from their article in MacDonald's text. Goodness is what all desire, says Aquinas, quoting Aristotle, and what is desired is desirable. Desirability is an essential aspect of goodness. Now, if a thing is desirable as a thing of a certain kind, then it is desirable to the extent at which it is perfect of that kind. A thing is perfect of the kind to the extent in which it is fully realized or developed, the extent to which the potentialities definitive of its kind have been actualized. So Aquinas says a thing is perfect and hence desirable to the extent to which it is in being. That's one way of seeing how it is true to say that a thing's goodness is its being. Okay, so that's their interpretation of the argument. So back to my analysis of this argument. The conclusion of Aquinas' argument here appears to be a strong identity claim. Goodness and being are the same, really, which in categorical logic would be the conjunction of the claims all being are goodness, and all goodness are being. It's hard to put these terms categorically and use the singular versus the plural singular versus the plural in the verb form. Being is or being are. Okay. So standard form categorical syllogism is all SRP. So I'll just, it may sound awkward, but I'll try and use the plural. This seems a bit puzzling since Aquinas as well as Stump and Kreitzman's interpretation of Aquinas' argument seem to only offer one argument. So in order to solve the puzzle, there are really two separate arguments implicit in the first way. In order to make the argument clear, I'm going to use the following key to stand for the categories referred to in Aquinas' argument. So the key is G. G stands for good, D stands for desirable, P stands for perfect, A stands for actual, and E stands for existence or being. So I'm going to use E to stand for existence and being. I know some philosophers want to distinguish existence from being, but I'm going to use the two terms interchangeably or synonymously. So here's the first argument. All G are D, all D are P, therefore all G are P. Premise 3, all P are A, therefore all G are A, therefore all A are E, therefore all G are E. So that gets you to all good are being, or all good is existence. All good are E. All good are existence. Okay. So now the second premise would be all D are G, all things desirable are good, all P, which is all perfections are desirable, therefore all P, all perfections are good. Insert the next premise that all A, which is all actual, things that are actual, are things that are perfect, therefore all A or G, all A or P is all actualizations are perfections. It may not be perfect in the sense that God is perfect, maximally perfect, but to be perfect does not mean to be maximally perfect. Therefore all A or G, therefore all E or A, therefore all E or G, which gives you all existence, are good. So I think there needs to be two, I don't know if this is anthememic, as I'll explain in a moment, but it seems like there's two arguments, one to the conclusion that all P are G, that is, all things that are perfect are good, and therefore to the final conclusion that all G are E, that all things that are good are existing. But then in categorical logic, you can't convert those. So you need another argument, it seems to me, that all E are G, that everything that exists is good. So everything that is good is existence is one conclusion of one argument, and then everything that is existent is good is another. So that's the way it seems to me. Now, I might be totally misinterpreting this. So if the argument 2, that all G are E, is the conclusion, where the first 4 premises are interpreted as strong identity claims, giving us the premises, and then the converse of the first argument. Thus, if C3 and C3 star, so C3, that was the premise in the first argument, which is kind of the conclusion of the first argument that all G are E, and the conclusion of the second argument that all E are G. If those premises can both be established on this interpretation of the text, then Aquinas' demonstration that being and goodness has been made a little more explicit. Okay. So solving this puzzle allows 3 things. First, it shows that Aquinas' logic may be strongly anthememic. There are assumed premises throughout, namely the first 4 premises are meant to be understood as both A-type categorical propositions and their converses. Even though you can't move from an A proposition to its converse, Aquinas seems to just assume that, or just kind of believes that, given the nature of the argument. Second, it helps to make explicit the solid deductive nature of Aquinas' reasoning. This exercise shows that we can deduce that being and good are the same directly from what we already know. In other words, if you already have knowledge of existence, you can get to the knowledge of good. This shows that given our knowledge of the realities of goodness, existence, desirability, natural appetency, perfection, and actuality, we can know that goodness and being are the same in reality. So, third thing we learn from this is that making an argument logically clear helps to bolster Aquinas' final point in the passage. That even though being and goodness are really the same, goodness adds something to being, namely the notion of goodness presents something new to being that is not known from our knowledge of being, qua being. Namely, that goodness just is being considered as desirability, or natural appetency. So even though being and good are really the same, we may really distinguish between the two. So in other words, this is what some philosophers might call a Suarezian distinction of reasoned reason. Now, that doesn't mean much to you. You can think of it this way. Eleanor Stump call it a Fregean distinction of sense and reference. So if you think of the old distinction between the phrase "the morning star" and the phrase "the evening star." So there's the morning star and the evening star. We have those two phrases in English, in the English language, Hesperus and Phosphorus. Right, phosphorus. But both of those terms or phrases refer to the same object. So being and good refer to the same object. Pick any object, this big tree back here. If I say the tree is good and the tree exists, I'm using two different terms that refer to the same thing in the tree. The existence is the essential exemplification, and the goodness is the same as the existence, namely its essential actualization. Both of those are two different ways of thinking about the same object. It's a sense of what Suarez calls the distinction of reasoned reason. And it's informative, but it's not a real distinction. It's a distinction that occurs in our intellects, but is not the same in the object. Being and good are identical in the object, but we can distinguish them intellectually and think about them in their different senses. So this may help us think about how the good is a transcendental category, since all being and all good overlap. Everything that is good, and everything good simply is. Okay. So that's the first way, the natural appetency argument. Okay. So let's look at the second way. This is an argument from corruption resistance. Actually, you know what? I think I'll make a second video on this. Let me sum up and kind of connect this, because we went kind of deep here on the metaphysics of the identity of being and good in Aquinas' article. So the idea behind this, to connect it to the Declaration of Independence, I think we're a long way from that right here. Look, in the Declaration, the founders say that we have unalienable rights, and those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. Are those arbitrarily given to us? Are those determined by the King of England? Are those determined by the government? No. They're natural rights. And by natural, I mean that they inhere in us, in you, in me, and every single human being. This is a universal declaration. It was not just for Americans, but Americans understood them and decided to create a political entity that embodied them. And their existence is not dependent on the whims of you or me or any particular government or any particular monarch. They are determined by what is real. So if that's the case, then you have to say, well, what is real? What is it for something to be real? Well, so for this tree back here, or for me or you, to be real is to exemplify an essential nature. And that essential nature is unique to us in terms of the kinds of things that we are. So we are human beings, and if you want to put it theologically, which I think we should, and I think our founders recognized in the Declaration, that our essential nature is determined by or created by God. But if you don't like that, well, I don't know what to tell you. But even if you don't recognize God's existence, you can still recognize that to exist as a human being is to exemplify a particular kind of nature, namely a human nature. Now, the existence of you and I as human beings, then, is also identical to the goodness of being human. Okay? And again, how is that? Well, it's because existence is identical to good. And the arguments that I just walked through in this prove that. Okay? If you want me to rehearse the argument again, I will. It goes simply like this. There's two stages to it, and the argument is relies on the principle of essential exemplification being in goodness. So all things that are good are things that are desirable. All things that are good are things that are desirable. In other words, they have a natural aim atness in them. That's the appetent or aphaetai. All things that are desirable are perfections. It's a little harder to get, but anything that has a natural appetency has the perfection of existing in the first place, and a goal-directedness that is already achieved when it comes into existence. Therefore, all things that are good are perfections. So anything that is good is already perfect insofar as it exists as good. Okay. The next premise is that all things that are perfect are actual. That is, anything that exists as a perfection of any kind, including the perfection of existence, is already actual. Therefore, all things that are good are things that are actual. Okay? Anything that is good is also actual. Therefore, all things that are actual are things that exist. Okay. Anything that has any sort of actuality is something that is existing. That's, again, established in the previous notion that to exist is to actualize an essential nature. But if that's the case, then all things that are good are things that exist. So then we've got two conclusions that are conjoined. All things that are good are things that are, all things that are good are things that are existing. That's the end of our first argument. Okay, all things that are good exist. Okay, now the second argument will be conjoined with that all things that are desirable or are things that aim at anything, which an essential nature always does, are good. Okay, and that was from the previous argument considered that anything that is desirable, anything that has a natural teleological directedness, aphaetai, an appetent, a natural appetency, is good. Okay, in other words, it aims at something. All things that are perfections are things that are desirable. Right? Anything that is already actualized a certain essential nature has an appetency directly in it. Therefore, all things that are perfections are good. Okay? But then we need to add to that all things that are actual are perfections. That seems necessarily true. Therefore, all things that are actual are good. And since all things that exist are actual, therefore all things that exist are good. So now we've got our two conclusions. All things that are good are things that exist, and all things that exist are things that are good. Which means that being and goodness, existence and goodness are overlapping categories. Okay, so now once you've got that, that means that if you exist, if you're watching this video, I don't think you can doubt that. Well, maybe you can doubt that this video is real, but I don't think you can doubt that you are existing when you're thinking about watching this video. We'll nod to Descartes there. But if being and goodness are overlapping things, then that means if you have being as a human being, then you have a certain kind of perfection and a certain kind of goodness as a human being. And that goodness, given your existence, has within it certain features of your nature, which are the things that the pursuit of happiness, the right to life and liberty, those rights are grounded in your essential nature as a human being. And of course, we can spell out what exactly those are and what features of being human those are connected to. Maybe we'll do that in a couple other videos. Okay, so that's just the first argument. Aquinas has 3 other arguments for the identity of being and good, and we'll walk through those in another couple videos. Thanks for watching.
Stay psyched, Grom. You.